Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Thinnest Veil podcast. My name is Dr. Melissa Bird, and I'm super excited to have my friend Dali with me again today. Hi, Dali.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming back to chat with me about immigration and just all the things that are happening in the world and in our country. Um, for people who may have missed our conversation before, would you just say a little bit about who you are and what you do in the world?
So I'm Dali. I educate parents about bullying awareness and prevention. And I am a Nicaraguan American. I came to the US at the age of 7, and I've learned a lot. And I love to share information that can help uh, possibly avoid challenges in life for other people. So that's why I like to have these different type of conversations. And I love also learning. I think a lifelong learner. I'll never get tired of it.
I know. I love learning new things so much. It makes me so happy. And you're also a veteran, which is pretty
That's
rad
right.
because I'm a big
Yes.
fan. I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of the
10
veterans.
years in the army. Mhm.
Yeah. Nice. Um, so I want to continue our conversation today. Um, we talked a little bit about the social learning curve last time we spoke, but I really would love to get into this idea of immigrants assimilating into the United States culture and what that experience is like, and also what the barriers are, like the assumptions that people make in the United States about what people know coming into our country feel a little arrogant to me. A little bit like, well, everybody just knows that, so you should just know that. um and so I'd love to start with that, like a little bit about not just your personal experience,
Mhm.
but also what you know other people who are immigrating to this country experience when
Right.
it comes to that.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because I for a long time I was like, "Oh yeah, it's cool to assimilate. That's what you're supposed to do." But then I was like, "Wait a minute. Is that right? Because it doesn't seem I'm going to say healthy because the word assimilate means to a lot of us who immigrate, it means leaving part of what we are, who we are behind and adapting or adopting new beliefs and cultures and stuff. And really it should be more of a merger of like being able to keep yours, what's yours, and taking in the new. And it can be very impactful. I remember as a child, I kind of felt embarrassed for some of my cultural practices because here in the US, it was almost like you were shamed for doing certain things or like for dressing the way that you dress because that's not how we dress here in the US. It's ridiculous instead of embracing it. So it's really hard for a child to be able to love those parts of themselves when somebody's telling them, no, you're not supposed to. This is not what we do. Just like I remember, I think I was in freshman year high school. I love PE and I had a best friend, Carmen, and Carmen and I would take laps around the track.
Hmm.
And while we were taking laps, we would talk.
Hmm.
And then there were days where we had to walk and others when we had to run. So when we would walk, we would talk. And I
Hmm.
remember a teacher, my PE teacher, Mr. Chapman, he was like this guy that looked like Chuck Norris in every sense of the word. Um, so he could be really intimidating. I did not like him. He was like super aggressive for no reason for to all of us. But he walked up to Carmen and I one day and he was like, this is not a time to be talking. This is PE. And I was like, this is stupid. You can run and to hug at the same time. Like, this is also the US. You do not speak Spanish in my class. And I said, well, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to my friend. It's a personal conversation. He didn't like it. And I totally dismissed it. So that was towards the end of the class. And then the next day we came back. I did the same thing. He sent me to the counselor, to the principal's office. My counselor, who happened to be a person of Mexican descent, I remember he pulled me into his office and he was like, "Come here, let's talk about this." He's like, "You need to teach, listen to your teacher." And I thought he was going to defend me because there is no national law that says the language in the United States is English.
Right.
Um, it's what makes us beautiful, right? That we have people from all over the world here, and you can talk whatever language you want. And yeah, we know that for business, it's usually English. And I respect that all the way. I do. But instead of defending me, he was like, you just have to listen to him. He's like, he's going to fail you. And I'm like, for speaking English? I mean, for speaking Spanish? And he failed me. He failed me PE. And I was so pissed and heartbroken because this person that I thought was going to be an ally just folded like a little bee. and I'm guessing that was part of his assimilation. You know,
Right.
that's part of it. Like they tell you, get rid of this part of you. We don't
Right.
like it.
Yeah.
And so that was the result of his assimilation. Whether he was born here or not, you have to, when you come from um, any other part of the country, I mean, or of the world, you know, you come here and you adopt certain things. Like one of the things I noticed too is people who come. So I'm from Nicaragua,
Right.
and I know people from Nicaragua who have recently come to the U.S. and Father's Day just passed, so I bumped into one of them and I said, "Hey, Happy Father's Day." He's like, "Oh yeah, well, it's not Father's Day to me right now. It's on a different day. I think it's like towards the end of the month."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry." Like I just assumed because I've
Yeah.
been here since I was 7. I'm 46 now, so um,
It seems to me like what your school counselor did is also a form of protection, right? Like, how do you avoid conflict in a a, a space where standing up for you as a student could have created professional problems for him? Like, if the teachers are willing to attack students for speaking Spanish, what are they willing to do to their colleagues, right?
right. Yeah, I think protection for himself, not for me.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is
Right,
that
right.
that was his form of protecting what he had. So I think so often here in this country, we don't stand up for other people because we are so entrenched with thinking I will lose my life if I stand up for somebody else's life. And I
Right,
see this with in the feminist movement all the time, right? Like we're supposed to be feminists as a whole are supposed to be standing up for other people, but oftentimes, what we see is that there is a fear of losing what little gains we have made. And so
right.
we don't speak up. I think that is changing. Um, but I think that so often in this, and I think this is part of this idea of how do you understand this culture in this country when the culture is so different by region, right? Because what
Yes,
people do in the South is not what they do in the Northeast, is not what we do in the West, is not what we do in the middle of the country. Like, also, you could be an immigrant moving into Georgia and then you end up in California and the whole world upends.
right, right.
How do
Yeah.
you, how do you, what do you want people to know, people who aren't immigrants who are
Mhm.
listening to this,
Yeah.
what do you want them to know about what that does to the soul? Like, what does that do? What do you think? How does that impact people's lives?
Well, everybody's different, of course. Some people are impacted in a negative way really bad. Like, it can have long-lasting impacts depending on what they experience. But
Mhm.
I know that you always feel othered, like you don't belong. For a lot of immigrants, it's like we're walking in different spaces all the time. When you're home, you are a different person than when you are at work than when you are with friends. Some people call that code switching.
Mhm.
Um, because we're expected to assimilate, but it's more than just learning English and following the laws or celebrating the 4th of July. It means navigating these unspoken expectations around race, privilege, and a whole lot of inherited trauma, especially around slavery. And slavery is like this thing that, for me, in Nicaragua, it was not taught. But then again, I was very young, so maybe I just hadn't gotten to that. But when I speak to other Nicaraguans who have migrated here, and I try to share information about, hey, um, nobody's going to teach you this, so I am. Don't ever say the N word. This is where it comes from. This is why it's so bad. This is why. And then we talk about colorism and all that, because you don't realize that there's colorism in every single ethnicity and race. It
Right.
exists. And for many immigrants, especially from Latin America, Africa, Asia, or the Caribbean, this is both confusing and emotionally jarring, because there's a lot of um, navigating that we have to do with these unspoken social expectations.
Yeah.
And like the transatlantic slave trade, US chattel slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, mass incarceration, none of that is ancient history. It has
Right.
always existed. And it has ripple effects in health and housing, education, in policing today as we speak. And immigrants are entering the country, um, especially those of color, they feel those effects without understanding where they come from. Like when I shared the
My gosh,
story.
that is such what you just said is so important for people to hear, that they
Yeah,
feel the effects of that history of
exactly.
slavery and genocide without knowing the
Right,
history of
because
it at all.
exactly. Like to me, I remember it was so baffling to learn about these things simply through social interactions, and a lot of it through bullying. I experienced a lot of bullying, and I didn't know why people were calling me like La India, like Indian. And because in Latin America, in the Latin world, it's almost like an insult to be indigenous. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
because the idea is strive to be white,
Yeah.
so they applaud whiteness, they applaud the lighter skin, the colored eyes. And you see a lot of people that dye their hair because of that. Not all, of course.
Sure.
um, but this colorism, and there are all these things that we grow up listening to as jokes or just like conversational phrases that we don't realize are super ingrained in racism, in
Right.
slavery, and in so much oppression.
Mhm.
And when I start talking to other immigrants of Latino descent, and I point out, hey, what you just said, that is not right. That's, you're actually, unconsciously or maybe subconsciously ingraining the idea of whiteness is right to your children, or to, or maybe you believe it or whatever. And they push back, they look at me like I'm crazy. But you have to have that conversation in a very delicate way and in a very inviting way, so that they understand that, hey, I'm trying to help you so that you don't become part of the oppression party. You become part of the um, party that elevates others. And it's really hard. It's really hard. And so if you were to teach that to kids at an early age, you're still going to have that pushback, but I think kids are just so much more able to receive and understand and be more open-minded.
Yeah.
And
I
they
also
don't.
I
Mhm.
also think that one of the things that I think a lot of people, when they're talking about immigration, they're talking about the processes of immigration, like getting your green card and doing this and
Yeah.
having a system in place that works for everybody. And what we're missing is the nuance. What strikes me listening to you talk, especially about like you're one person at home, you're another person at work, you're another person at school, you're another person in a restaurant or at the
Mhm.
movie or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't think it's just code switching. It's almost like being constantly in a liminal space where you're it's almost like you're never tethered to one thing. Like the groundedness of who you are spiritually and culturally, um, you have to set that aside in order to survive this country. And so
Yeah.
you're always in this liminal place of not quite knowing what's going to work. And you're trying to deal with the system at the same time, which is its own set of social and uh, political expectations.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I just came to mind is even being within my own community. First of all, as a Nicaraguan in the United States, I am almost always the only Central American in a group.
Right.
That's slightly changing now, but we're still the minority, extreme minority.
Hmm.
So I remember the first time that I came to a space where there were a lot of people from Central America. I think at the beginning I was the only Nicaraguan.
Mm.
Everybody else was like Salvadorian, Guatemalan, Honduran, and I remember I heard a lot. Oh, you don't sound Nicaraguan.
Mm.
And then when I met Nicaraguans, they were like, "Oh, you're Nicaraguan? You don't speak like a Nicaraguan." And
Mm.
it's so irritating because, of course, I'm not going to have the same dialect
Right.
of somebody who grew up in Nicaragua because I grew up in the United States
Right.
and I grew up in California, of all places.
Right.
So, like, had I grown up in Georgia or like Texas, my dialect would be different too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, it's just that's what I mean about like there's this feeling of you just don't belong anywhere. There's so many people who like I've only been to Nicaragua once after I left at the age of 7. It was in 2016, and I remember being in the country, beautiful country, and people noticing my Spanish is different. Even
Mhm.
the way that I dress was different,
Mhm.
and people look at you with this like intrigue. They don't look at you as one of theirs. Not all, at least. Some of them like, well, yeah, she's ours, but she's American, like
Right.
from the U.S. Like, but that, but like, gosh, that's crazy. So like, you're not fully accepted 100% from any group.
Fair.
And I'm like, wow, I wonder what that feels like for a white person who has had many generations living here in the United States, and for them to do they feel that like that's I wonder because I mean I can understand how you can feel like not part of a community that is exactly like you, but I wonder, it's just different. It's got to be a different experience, not to say like they don't experience it. I'm sure that they do, but I think it's just a whole different level because it's just um like at one point I remember trying to prove, yes, I am Nicaraguan enough. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I doing that? Like
Yes.
the human experience is so different
Right.
regardless of what you are or where you come from, what ethnicity, what race, what social status or economic status. It's so different. Like one of the things that always sets me apart from every person, not just Latinos, is I am not religious.
Mm.
So people ask me like, "Oh, so are you gonna go to church for Easter Sunday?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, no, no." And they're
Like,
like, "Well,
is
you
that the assumption that because you're Latino,
know."
you're Catholic?
Right. And the other thing that I realize is that just not being religious is so different because there are so many celebrations in Latino America that are tied to religion.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Like one of the things that I tell my kids I want to go experience, though I am not religious, is I want to go to Guatemala because they have this like huge, beautiful celebration where they paint like this colored like sand and sawdust to make these like kind of like mandalas, but there's these designs, and then the procession of like the forgive me if I'm wrong, whatever it's called, because I'm not versed in the religious lingo, but it's a procession of like, I think the resurrection of Jesus. Like they carry the cross and the Virgin or whatever. But it's beautiful to me. It's interesting. I have no desire to become Catholic or to follow religion in that way, but it's something that I'm open minded to experiencing and seeing for
I'll
myself.
go with you. I'll totally go with you.
Definitely, let's
I will go
go.
with you for
It's
that. I
next
do love
Easter.
me some Jesus and I love the resurrection. So
Yes.
I will totally go with you to that. But one of the things that I think is so interesting, and one of the things I really want people to hear too is that the I mean, just assuming that everyone from Latin America is Catholic, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's crazy.
it
There's like a
yeah,
huge population of Latinos who are Jewish. Like people
right.
don't know
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
totally.
Yeah.
And I think that I also think that this is what I want people to really understand. Like when you and I were deciding to do these conversations together, one of the things we talked about is most people who immigrate to this country don't know about the Holocaust.
Yeah. They actually don't even know that they are considered Latino. There's
Right.
so many of them that I spoke to, and they were like, I didn't know. I didn't know that I'm like Latino or Hispanic. I have never heard
Right.
that word before.
These
That's a
are
US.
terms we use
Yeah.
to apply to other people that nobody else uses.
Yes, it
We
is.
assume that it is a global experience for everyone to use these terms.
Hmm. Yeah, in many countries, races does not frame the same way that it is in the US.
Right.
Like a Latin American immigrant might be considered white back home, but is seen as a person of color here, or they might not understand how deeply racial identity shapes people's experiences in this country. And then the hard part is that many immigrants have absorbed their own anti-Blackness
Yeah.
biases
Yeah.
from their home countries, like colonization, colorism, caste systems, and even white supremacy are global exports.
Right.
So now you have people trying to adjust to US norms while untangling what they thought they knew about race. And one of the things that I always remember hearing is Trevor Noah,
Yeah.
the host of, what was it, The Daily Show? Well, he's not hosting anymore, but I remember he had this conversation about coming to the United States because in South Africa, he was always considered not black enough because his father is what, Irish, I think, or Scottish or something like that,
I
and
think
his
so.
mom is black. So he said he like gets out of the airport and he's in New York and he tries to hitch a taxi and or something like that, and somebody walks up to him and starts speaking to him in Spanish because he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be black, in the U.S. in America." And then this person walks up to him and starts talking to him in Spanish, and he assumed that he was like Puerto Rican because of his skin color, because he's too light to be black. He's like, he's like, great. Just when I thought I was gonna be black enough, here
And
I'm
that,
Latino.
yes, and it's the perfect illustration. Like, one of the things, and this is where I think um progressives who are trying to be totally inclusive actually end up being entirely exclusive of people through language. Calling every single person African American who has dark skin
Oh
is
yeah,
not that's not it,
that's
right?
so
Like
wrong. Mhm.
it's because not everybody is African American.
Right. They don't
And
identify that way. Yeah.
no, and
Mhm.
that is not even something that people say, right? And
Mhm.
there there is so much I think we could learn from releasing some of this language that we think makes us better people. I was listening to a podcast this morning and someone was talking about how they think that liberals are willing to admit when they get it wrong. And I had a record screech happen in my head. Kind of, I was like, I don't think that's true. Because I think we are people, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're on the right or the
Yeah.
left of politics. We have a really hard time with saying, wow, I really screwed that up and I'm
Exactly.
sorry. And I'm going to try and do better. And I think in the context of immigration, we really screw some things up.
We do. Hmm.
We really do. So, um, I want to, I'm going to save our Rage and Women conversation
Okay.
for another
The
day,
other topic, yeah.
for next week, next time.
Okay.
Um, but I'm wondering, are there like just a couple of things that you want to leave people with about how they can help immigrants who are really spending all this time in these liminal spaces and, like you said, having to code switch and I like the idea of thinking about it as never being rooted, right? Like,
Mhm.
and it strikes me, oh, this is a thought that popped in my head that I almost forgot. Like in the foofy woo woo spiritual world, we're always talking about rooting. I talk about this all the time, like grounding yourself in place and really rooting to the land and connecting with the land because that's how we stay connected to the earth and ourselves. And one of the things that really struck me as I was listening to you talk is this idea that even when you go back to the place of your ancestors, you still don't fit in.
Yeah, it's painful.
And
It's
that's how it is for those of us who are Native American and
painful.
don't grow up with our people. Like there is an assumption that you grow up with your people. But
Right.
because of colonization and genocide, we don't grow up with our people.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I just wanted to say that because I think it's a really I'm taking that with me to New
Okay.
more
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But what are like three or four things you really want people to walk away with from this conversation, particularly around this idea of the assumptions we make about immigrants understanding our history and assimilation and sort of
I would love people to keep in mind that the US does not teach its history very well. So everyone is in the dark. Even people born and raised here, they often don't know the full truth about slavery or
yeah.
about migration, why it happens, how involved the US is in the politics of these countries, and which is what causes a lot of the hardships going on in those countries. And that's why people seek the US as a place of refuge. And it's often, history is often like sanitized or omitted from school curriculums, and today, even more than ever. So expecting immigrants to just know what's appropriate, or like what's appropriate to say, or how to show solidarity is unrealistic, because even US born Americans don't know how to do that, especially when, yeah, even Americans here, US Americans, are confused or defensive about it. So keep that in mind. And the other thing is, instead of judging somebody, like, we have to walk around assuming or giving people the benefit of doubt until you ask. Just
Yeah.
ask. And you can do it in such a polite way. You can say, like, hey, I'm not very knowledgeable about your culture or your nationality or whatever. So if I ever say anything insensitive, could you please correct me
Mm,
and school me on it? Because I'm here to learn, and I want to really get to know you. That means so much. Also, like, doing basic things like say people's name correctly.
yeah.
I have to learn how to say other names, English names that are complicated. um, I have to say them correctly because I'm expected to, because I'm an immigrant. So why can't you give me the same courtesy? My name is Dali, not Dolly or Dahlia. Like, like, people call me so many different things. And it starts with their name, because their name is their identity. It's also part of who they are. It's part of their culture. For a lot of them, names mean more than just what you call them. It's a historical, um like, time capsule, I guess you can call it, a historical stamp of, like, this is who I am and this is where I come from. So
Yeah.
be respectful. And I hate it when people say, I'm sorry, I just don't know how to say it, or I'm just embarrassed. Well, guess what? I was embarrassed to have to learn the English language because I chopped it up so bad. And I still cannot say some words very, very well. You can tell in my accent sometimes, but I'm still doing it. So don't tell me you're too embarrassed to
Yeah.
say my name correctly. Please.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is your name sounds different depending on what region people are from too, because people
Yes.
pronounce the A's and the I's differently. Like
Right.
like I have a Utah accent, so I pronounce things very differently than people in
Hmm.
the South or in the North, right? So I think that's such a good point.
And the thing is, like, I understand when people are trying and they still butcher it. It's cool. Like, I appreciate that you're trying, although it's still coming out wrong. But then I've had a-holes that purposely do it wrong
Right.
because they're kind of like just making a point, like, I am not going to because I don't feel like it because that is not an English name.
Yeah,
Therefore,
they
I
turn it
don't
into
have
a
to.
snotty A like that.
Yes. It's just wild because you know what? I wouldn't disrespect you like that. If you tell me your name is hell, you can tell me your name is Oak Tree. I will call you Oak Tree. If you can call Snoop Dogg, Mr. Snoop Dogg at that, why can't you call me Dali? Like it's a name. So you're willing to say all these other names that, like if
Oh,
an alien came down and was like, so what are these people's names? And then they're like Snoop Dogg, Dali, Melissa,
yeah.
Chance the Rapper, like it's like people were like, wait a minute, what's going on with these names? They're still gonna say them.
I
But
love that so
mhm,
much.
yeah. And then also
Right.
like the other thing I just want to say is, check your biases. We
Mm,
all have them.
mhm.
And there is strength in admitting when you have them because it helps you to unlearn and relearn things. It's okay to say, I didn't know that. And what matters is being willing to listen, read, and learn. If you don't want to read, there's audiobooks. If you don't want to do audiobooks, have conversations with those people. Books and podcast documentaries, conversations can help fill these gaps. And there's some great books like the what is it, the 1619 Project.
Yeah.
It's a book and a podcast.
Yeah.
Stamped Racism,
The
Anti-Racism.
Rediscovery of America.
Mm-hmm. There's, I mean,
Discovery of America is by Ned Blackhawk is one of my most favorite books about.
yeah, follow like Black and Latino historians and educators and, um, you know, think about solidarity over assimilation.
Yes.
Instead of trying to fit in.
There's the title of the podcast.
So yeah, solidarity over assimilation. Yeah, instead of trying to fit in with systems that harm others, like immigrants can join forces with people fighting for equity, and that means like advocating for fair policy, supporting movements like Black Lives Matter, and making space for Black and Brown voices if they're calling
Yeah.
things out that feel uncomfortable. But you don't have to go out and create a movement. You can join one. You can create a movement in your own home by always educating your children about stuff. Like when you're watching something, um like my daughter's boyfriend was watching, I think it was Captain America.
Mhm.
And I think like I find historical things in there, right? Like of course World War II. And
Mhm.
so I don't know how we ended up talking about like the racist things that led up to World War II. And um, uh, just like so many things that you can get out of movies that are meant for entertainment.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have factual things, but keep in mind some of these are twisted a little bit for entertainment purposes.
Right.
um, but taking something and constructive constructively like breaking it down,
Yeah.
everything has a message. Like one of my favorite things that I recently saw was on the most recent Captain America with Anthony Mackie.
Mhm.
There's this part where he's like looking through the glass at his buddy who got like blown out of the sky. And he says like, man, and I think it's, who is it that walks in, I can't remember who walks in and talks to him. But he says, it's just so hard pretty much to like be on that spotlight because everybody expects you to be perfect because of like who you are, like especially when you're different. And it's not fair. I was as I was thinking about that, I was like, it's not fair for us, the different ones, to have to show everybody else and to educate everybody else. It's not fair that we have to prove ourselves more than anybody else just because of the color of our skin or where we come from. um, and that keeps happening because people are still not open-minded enough, and they refuse to do some self-awareness and accept that they have biases that they need to unlearn.
I think there's a harmony that my hope is as we're wrapping up this conversation that people will really gravitate toward this idea that we have to do our own work. We have to listen, we have to watch, we have to read, we have to connect. with, you know, great works of podcasts and books and movies and documentaries that exist, because thank goodness all of these resources exist. And also, I think there is a harmony where we also can connect with our immigrant family, our immigrant friends, our immigrant, you know, this is always my wish as a Native person, that someone will actually ask me about my experience, because my experience is actually not that rare of an experience. It turns out that I'm actually not that unusual as a Native person in this country. And I thought I was. I thought I was very, too white to be Native, too Native to be white. Like
Mhm.
I've had these experiences, and it turns out that actually a lot of Native people have those experiences. So I also think there's a harmony with also asking questions of our friends, and and being inquisitive and vulnerable enough to carry on conversations, not because we want
Yeah.
everyone to do the heavy lifting for us, but because if we lose that capacity for dialogue with people that we know, then we're never going to be able to connect and become communal and create community around each other. And so I think that what you're bringing up is really important, because I think there's two pieces to that. Do your homework and expand your vision. And also remember, we all carry the oppressed and the oppressor within us. All of us do.
Yeah.
And, and ask questions. Be
Yeah.
be willing to answer questions. Don't just say, "Well, I'm not gonna talk to you about that," right? Like we all have to be a little more open to saying, "Oh, that's really interesting. I can't believe you're asking me that, but
Hmm.
here's why, let's talk about that. Why do
Yeah.
you think that way?" If we
Yeah.
just get
Like,
more curious with each other, I think it would really change the way we talk.
yeah, feeling that resistance and questioning, hey, why am I feeling this resistance right now?
Yeah.
It's so powerful to be able to do that, and to be able to admit when you're like, oh, because one of the things I always hear is like, these immigrants are taking jobs. I'm like, how many immigrants do you know have taken Americans as jobs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they'll realize they're following rhetoric
Yep.
or what they hear in the media rather than their own experience. It's like,
Yeah.
your own experience is more truthful than what you're hearing. And
Yeah.
like I've never seen an undocumented immigrant come and steal, a corporate job, or like my job as an editor, or as a,
Sure.
service member. Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, Dolly, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I love
Appreciate
having these conversations.
Me too. They're so fun. And I can't wait to talk next week.
Likewise.
Talk
Till
to you
next
soon.
time.
Bye.
Bye.